that is the way. And I pray that God will speak to us about his way, the way that he has chosen for his people. And I'll preface my saying by saying this. The way of God is not easy. The way of God is not paved with gold. But it is the way that God has chosen for his people. To each person, Yahweh has given a special gift. That is, every individual has been given the opportunity of choice. We all have this ability, or might I say, we all have this responsibility to choose the course and the direction of our lives. God gave us the freedom to choose. What I choose to do with my life, maybe not what you choose to do with your life. But that's okay, because this is the gift of choice that has been given to every single individual, man, women, and children. The gift of choice. This right, this privilege to decide, should not be seen, brothers and sisters, as a benefit that is derived from man's own ability or from any governmental power. No, our right to choose, and for that matter, all of our rights, has its genesis in Yahweh, our Creator, who has made us. God himself has given us this right, and not man. Contrary to what you think, the government thinks that they have all kind of power that they give you, or they invest in you this right to make decisions. Even America's forefathers said as much when they endorsed the Declaration of Independence authored by Thomas Jefferson. For the Declaration says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights." In other words, unalienable rights refer to that which cannot be given away or taken away by man. God has given us rights, brothers and sisters. And because each of us have these rights, or have been given these rights by God as a gift, it then, oh God, falls upon us to make use of these rights and to use this right to choose in the right way. And because, not only that, because he has given us these rights, it is he and only he that has the authority to take them away from us. Man cannot take away your right to choose. But God can, because he is the originator, the author, the giver of these things. Listen to what Job said as he testifies to this truth. In Job chapter 1, verse 21, he says, "Naked I came into this world through my mother's womb, and naked I shall return." He says, Yahweh gave, and Yahweh taketh away. Blessed be the name of Yahweh. God has the authority to take away the very thing that he has given us. That is the right to choose. Through direct involvement or through human agency, it is Yahweh and Yahweh alone that has the authority to annul or to cancel our rights to choose. But for the most part, each of us has the right to choose for our own lives. And because we possess this special privilege, how we then choose becomes gravely important. because our choices will be judged. Let us remember, lest we forget, our foreparents, Adam and Chava, or Adam and Eve, and the choice that was set before them. Now, in front of this special couple, Yahweh placed a set of options that would ultimately determine their fate and would determine their future life with him. The option that confronted them were pretty simple and straightforward. They were, will you obey me or will you disobey me? This is the choice that God put before Adam and Eve. Will you obey me or will you disobey me? From God's perspective, that truly was the only question that he needed them to answer. All the other finer points and minute details that some look for as they speculate about why God placed a tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the midst of the garden. They speculate, why would God do that? Why would God tempt them or test them with this tree? All God cared about was whether they would obey him or disobey him. Some people want to know what's so bad with being inquisitive or trying to understand the difference between right and wrong or good and evil. What crime did Adam and Eve commit by wanting to know what God knows? For even after they partook of the tree, God said they have become like one of us. They know the difference between good and evil. Some people says there's nothing wrong with knowing that. Many don't think that there was any harm or there is any harm in knowing. But the question is not one of understanding or even being inquisitive. It was a question of whether one would obey Yahweh or not. That was the question. Adam and Chava was given the opportunity through this test to either do what they were told, whether they understood it or not, whether they agreed with it or not. They, brothers and sisters, were put through this test to see if they would do what they were told or to do as they pleased. The choice was theirs and theirs alone to make, to obey or not to obey. That was the question that Yahweh was waiting for them to decide on. It is this same question that confronts each and every one of us every day. Will we obey Yahweh or not? Forget the finer details and being inquisitive or understanding. It all boils down to, will we obey him or not? Doesn't matter if we understand or not. Doesn't matter if we can gain knowledge and better ourselves with. That's not the question that God is seeking or the answer that he is seeking. From each of us, he is seeking whether we will obey him or not. Will we choose to follow our own way? Or will we submit ourselves to the way of God? From Yahweh's perspective, which is the one which is the only one that truly matters. There only exists a right way and a wrong way. The way of doing what he deems to be right, or doing then what he declares is wrong. The way of obedience or the way of disobedience. We must, brothers and sisters, understand this one important point. With Yahweh, there is no middle ground or gray area. It's either yes or no, white or black, up or down, north or south, to obey or to disobey, to comply with his will or to rebel against his will. There are some people who may not like this fact of either right or wrong, black or white. But it really doesn't matter what some people like or dislike. It really doesn't matter what some people think. This is the way of God. Yahweh forces us. We may not like that word, but it's true. Yahweh forces us to make decisions about whether we will obey him or not, just like he forced Adam and Hava to make a decision about the tree. The reason why God placed the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden is it forced the man and the woman into making a decision about following God. Would they obey him unconditionally or not? Every single day that they saw that tree, they were confronted with that decision. Every single day, they had to decide whether they would obey God or not. It is no different with us. Every single day, we must decide if we are going to follow God or not, if we are going to obey God or not. Usually, when we make decisions that don't turn out the way that we intended them to, or hope that they would, or when we have made a decision opposite of what we know is right, we, like most people, because we're not immune, because we're human, we, like most people, began to offer up excuses to justify our choices, to justify our decisions, or to justify the position that we now find ourselves in. In defiance of God, or in defiance of our parents, or any type of authority, we sometimes do the opposite of what is right, because they may have made us mad, or we're angry with them, and we choose to do opposite of what they want us to do. We've all been there. We were children once. You know how it is. Mom and dad tell you not to do something because you're angry, or because you want to do it, you go ahead and do it to defy them. And even people do the same with God. They're angry at God for whatever reason. My life didn't turn out right. I was abused when I was young, and you weren't there to help me and protect me, or whatever it may be. Because we're mad at God and didn't like the way things turned out, or thought he could do more, we then defy him and defy his will. And then, to justify ourselves, we make excuses, or we blame others for then our bad choices. We say, oh, because so-and-so did this, or so-and-so did that, that's why. You have it all the time. People in jail committing murders, and they're being tried for this murder, or tried so that they won't face the death penalty. They say, oh, I did these bad things because I was abused when I was a child. Or my daddy was mean to me and it caused me to be mean. He was an alcoholic and he beat me and thrashed me about. So 30 years later, I become this serial killer. Or because I saw what he did, now I'm molesting children. Or I'm an alcoholic. Or I'm mean to my spouse. Men or women, we make excuses for our choices or for our behavior. We choose either to behave good or bad. Not just, this doesn't just happen out in the world, but it happens even in the house of God. We make excuses for our bad choices or for disobeying. Whatever one's rationale, hear me now, there are no excuses that can be offered that will suffice for our disobedience. On the judgment day, when everyone will have to stand before God, the scripture says we are going to have to give an account of the life we've lived in this body. And Yeshua's going to sit back and let people defend themselves. People are going to offer up all kind of excuses. I can imagine while they're sitting there offering up excuses, he's sitting there doodling. It's like, okay, all right. Just like when the Jewish leadership brought this woman before him and accused her of adultery, making all these accusations against her. What did he do? He just bent down and started writing in the sand. Talking about, let me know when you're done. And it's going to be the same way. People will make excuses, but God doesn't want to hear your excuses. Just like he didn't want to hear the excuses of Adam and Eve. Oh, the serpent did it. Oh, the woman did it. You did it. And as a result of you choosing, God was saying that you will have to pay the price for your disobedience. Once a person knows what God requires of them and then still chooses to do the opposite, they must know that they have done wrong, and by doing wrong, they have sinned. And by sinning, there is a price to pay. There is a penalty that must be paid. As the scripture says in James chapter 4, verse 17, so then, anyone who knows the right thing to do and fails to do it is committing sin. If you know that it is right and you still refuse to do the right thing, doesn't matter what it is, if you refuse to tell the truth, if you refuse to help those in need, if you refuse to do the will of God that he is commanding his children to do, then it is sin from God's perspective. Now, ignorance of what God requires is one thing, brothers and sisters. Defiance is completely another thing. Or defiance or trying to say that I won't comply with his will is another thing entirely. Once a person has a knowledge of Yahweh's word or has the opportunity to acquire this knowledge of what he requires, claiming ignorance or saying that I didn't understand will no longer be a viable option. For those who say that I have been taught that I don't have to obey the Torah because Yeshua did it for me. Don't you know that they will have to give an account? Will that excuse hold water? Will that excuse let them off of the hook? To say that, oh, the preacher man said. But God will say, I've given you 2 witnesses that testifies against you. The Spirit of truth and my holy word that I have written on your heart. They tell you, they speak to you what is right and what I require. Claiming ignorance or saying that you don't understand will no longer be a valuable option. The excuses as to why we choose not to obey Yahweh really doesn't matter, as they matter little to God as he passed judgment on Adam and Eve. He really didn't care the excuses that Adam came up with. He said it was her, like all good husbands do. Put the wife before them while all the bullets are flying, they ducking and hiding. It was her, that woman. He says that you gave me. It was all her fault. But God did not see it that way. He also blamed Adam for his choices. Yahweh told them what he wanted them to do. They instead chose what they wanted to do with devastating consequences. Understand that all offending parties were summarily punished for their insolence towards God. Yahweh wants his children to want to obey him at all times. This is what God is wanting from us. He wants us to choose to obey him. Why? Because we love him. Now, even if we don't understand it, or the other way seems to be the best option, if we have a choice, we're looking at 2 options, either to do it this way or to do it that way, to do it God's way or to do it our way. Sometimes, because we don't understand the way of God, we might think our way is better. Listen to what the scripture says in the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 25. It says, there can be a way which seems right to a person, but at his ends are the ways of death. There is a way that seems right to a person, but Yahweh is saying that that is the wrong way, because it leads you away from me and it causes you to disobey me, which will cause you destruction. So that means there is a way that doesn't only seem right to the natural man, but truly is the right way. In other words, Yahweh is telling us, don't lean to our own understanding, because the way we're looking, it seems to be the right way from our own human perspective. We can't see everything God sees. Like man says, we shouldn't spank our children because that harms their psyche. We shouldn't beat them because that's cruel punishment. But God says, don't spare the rod. He says they won't die, but it is making them comply. Man says, Homosexuality is just an alternative lifestyle, and we shouldn't oppress them. It's not wrong, they say. And because it's not wrong, they allow for homosexual couples to adopt innocent children, innocent babies, and pollute their mind with that mess. But God says it's wrong. It's an abomination to me. Their sin, the scripture says, to be a way that appears to be right. When God told the children of Israel, when you go into the promised land, there are 7 nations that you will annihilate. Men, women, and children. Spare no one, he says. From our perspective, it says, hey, that's cruel. That's wrong. You're killing women and children too. But from God's perspective, it was right. Who's to say that among all of those little children growing up that they didn't have the spirit of Hitler and Stalin? That these children will grow up and become people like Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden and all these other terrorists and murderers, Pol Pot and Khomeini and all of these other evil men. But because you think your way is right, you spare them. And when they grow up, they come hunting you down and your children and kill you. Don't you understand? God's way is right, but our way is always wrong. It appears to be right from our perspective. So God is telling us, don't lean to our own understanding or what we think is right. He is telling us to trust him even if you don't understand. Trust me, and I will guide you along the right way. Either way, brothers and sisters, we must choose. It's either the way of God or it is the way of man. Yahweh is forcing everyone to decide whether his way is right or whether man's way is right. He is forcing us to make a decision. There are no other options from which to choose, God's way or man's way. We literally are standing in the valley of decision. One way will take us to where we should be, and the other way will take us where we definitely don't want to go. God's way may appear to be dark, and people are afraid to walk down a dark path because they think the boogeyman and the lions and the tigers and thieves are there. And they're like Lot, who look over here and see a land that is bright and plush and a path that is paved with gold. And he says, that's the way to go. We must make a decision. Every day, multiple times a day, we are faced with the decision. Will we do what is right, or will we do what seems to be right? Elder Wheeler Wilcox wrote a poem in 1960 entitled, "'Tis or It Is the Set of the Sail," or "One Ship Sails East." The poem is about choices and how every human being is given two options: to either choose to go left or to choose to go right. To go where chance ultimately takes us or leads us, or to conclude in one's mind to walk the predetermined path that is set before you. Ella makes it clear that in the end, our decisions whether good or bad, impacts our future. What we choose today will have a strong effect on our tomorrow. What we choose today determines where we end up tomorrow. The poem goes like this: but to every mind there openeth a way and a way. A high soul climbs the highway, and the low soul gropes the low. And in between, on the misty flats, the rest drift to and fro. But to every man there openeth a highway and a low way, and every mind decideth the way his soul shall go. One ship sails east and another west, but the selfsame winds that blow, 'tis the set of the sails and not the gales that tells the way we go. Like the winds of the sea are the waves of time. As we journey through life, 'tis the set of the soul that determines the goal and not the calm or the strife. In our decisions, we set ourselves. This tells us the way we will be going. The decisions we've made and will make determines along whose path we will travel. Remember, there is only two paths that an individual can travel: the right way or the wrong way, God's way or man's way. There is only two paths that is set before us. Now, concerning these paths, listen to what Yeshua said in Matthew chapter 7, verse 13 and 14. He says this. He is admonishing his disciples to go in through the narrow gate. He says, for the gate that leads to destruction is wide and the road broad. And he says, and many travel it. But it is a narrow gate and a hard road that leads to life. And he says, only a few find it. Yeshua is admonishing us to go through the narrow gate and travel down the path less traveled. Because he says at its end that one will find the reward to life. Yeshua is telling us which way to go. He says, go through the narrow gate and travel the hard path that leads to life. Now, those who choose this path, this narrow path, has chosen the way of his Father, a way that culminates in one experiencing life, liberty, and happiness. This path that God has laid out for his people, at the end of that journey, there is life, liberty, and happiness. But understand this. But know that this path is called in the King James Bible the narrow way. It is a path that is laden with hardships. It is a path that is laden with troubles and pain. Hear me now. The Greek word for narrow way is the word thalibo, which means to press hard upon, to trouble, to afflict, or to distress. In other words, it is called the narrow or the hard road because those who choose to travel its path will experience sufferings that will require our perseverance in order to make it through. Yeshua says, this is the way that I want you to go, through the narrow gate, through the hard path. the hard way. He says, because at its end, there is life, blessings, and rewards. It is this path that Yahweh wants his children to travel upon. Hear me now. You hear some preacher says, oh no, life is easy, life is good for the child of God. These prosperity preachers tell you, why are you asking God for a loaf of bread when you can be asking for the factory to make all the bread you want, baby? Some prosperity preachers say, you'll never get sick. You'll never be ill because of faith, they say. But Messiah is telling you and I that this road that he has chosen for his people is a hard road, is a difficult road, is a road of affliction and pain and suffering and hardship. This is what he is telling us. It is not, he says, it is not an easy road. And in order to receive the blessings of life, God is saying that one must journey down this difficult path until they reach the end. This is why Yeshua says only few find it. That is, only few are willing to travel it. Because when hard times come, baby, a lot of folk get going. This is not what I thought it would be. I thought when I get saved, give my heart to him through his son Yeshua, that my life would change, that things would get better, they say. But it has gotten worse. But this is what Yeshua is saying to you and I. This is the way that God has chosen for his people. Why? Just like Adam and Eve, to see if you will obey him, to see if you will follow him, to see if you would trust him. Every single day we are confronted with that choice. Will I follow him or not? Will I obey him or not? My life is hard. I tell you what, there's some days I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting. Tired of the hard times. Tired of just scraping by. Sometimes I can't even scrape by. I'm down there scraping and scraping and scraping, and it doesn't amount to what I need to get through the day. You know what I'm talking about. And I'm tired. And because I'm tired, I want to sit down and quit. You know, I'm just being honest. I told my wife just yesterday, say, baby, I said, I don't know if it's right to feel this way. I told her, I said, but I can't wait till Shabbat is over so I can go home, get in my comfortable clothes, go upstairs, lay on the bed, and shut the door. Shut the whole world out. It'll just be me, the bed, and the TV. That's it. Because I was mentally, physically, and spiritually exhausted. Matter of fact, that's what I'm going to do anyway. That bed is waiting for me. I'm going to shut the door. And my wife says, you go ahead, baby. Just go home and shut the door. All the kids will be downstairs, and it'll be just me. We get tired of fighting sometimes. That doesn't mean I'm giving up on God. I'm just tired. I want a break. I want a reprieve. I want change to come. Because why? The road that we are traveling is difficult. It's hard. It takes its toll. Remember John the Baptist, after he stood up and told Herod, it is wrong for you to be sleeping with your brother's wife or to marry her. And because he stood up for what is right and true, he got thrown in jail. And he wasn't getting out, and he knew it. And because he was there, he became discouraged. He says, I am only preparing the way of the Messiah, and look where I am. He told his disciples, you go find Yeshua, and you tell him, are you the one, or is another one to come? Did I make a mistake? So his disciples came to Yeshua and told him what John the Baptist said. Yeshua said to his disciples, or John the Baptist's disciples, he says, you go back and tell John. The lepers are being healed. The blind are receiving sight. The lame are walking. The dead are rising again. In other words, he was telling, you did not make a mistake. I am who you said that I am, and hold on. Shortly thereafter, John the Baptist lost his head. This man was tired and he was discouraged because the road was hard even for him. But I like God. God did not criticize him and says, oh, come on, man up. Stop crying like a little girl. Yeshua didn't say that. He gave him reassurance. Hold on, John. Hold on. Don't give up. The fight is not over. Your journey is almost done. Hold on. The road is difficult. And that's why Yeshua says only a few find it or travel it. But he says, but those who are willing to travel the road that is wide, he says they are heading in the direction that will lead to their demise. He says that is the wrong way. It seems right. He says, but it is the wrong way. The wide road is the easy road, because those who travel upon this road, they are able to avoid or sidestep hardships. Like if you got a wide road and there's a big pothole, because the road is wide, you can just drive right around it. You can miss that pothole. You can miss the construction zone. But when there is a narrow road, baby, and there's a rock on this side and a rock on that side, all you can do is grip that steering wheel tight and roll over that hole and hope you don't break suspensions and shocks and things like that. In other words, God makes you go through. But the wide road, you can avoid these mishaps. You can sidestep hardships, suffering, and pain that they were intended to experience. The many who travel along this wide road, they reject the notion that they must do as the scripture says. The scripture says in 2 Timothy, it says, endure hardness as a good soldier of Messiah Yeshua. In other words, he is telling us to endure sufferings, to endure evils and hardships and troubles as a good soldier. They don't want that. No. I want my rose garden, as that one singer used to sing. That you never promised me a rose garden. They said, God did promise me a rose garden, and I want it. But God is telling them, endure hardness, endure suffering. And these people surmise, why suffer when you don't have to. That's what they say. If God says, I want you to go through, and I don't want you to come out, these folk is looking for a way out, baby. Oh, yeah. God says, I know you need some money, but you hold on and you trust me. Oh, no. These folk going out there, beg, borrowing, and if they got to, they will steal in order to get through. Because they don't want to suffer. They don't want to face hardships and trials. You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying is right. They would rather travel the easy road. Why travel a road that is paved with sufferings and pains when I don't have to? I don't want to live that way, they say, so I choose the easy and the wide road. Just like Lot chose Sodom and Gomorrah because it looked good from a distance. But when he got over there, oh my goodness, what did he find? An evil and perverse city. So evil that even he was afraid pretty much to go outside. He had to guard his own behind because somebody was looking at it the way a man looks at a woman. All that could have been avoided if he would have chose to do what was right and follow God instead of following his own way. Because these people travel or reject to travel the narrow way, they are in essence rebelling against Yahweh's commandment and are in disobedience to his will. He wants all his children to go through the narrow gate. He wants all of his children to travel this hard road. What many fail to realize is that this hard road is the will of God concerning them. The road fraught with danger. The road laden with difficulties and despair. It is the road that Yahweh has chosen for his children to travel upon. Here again, the words of Yeshua. It is a narrow gate and a hard road that leads to life. The road that leads to life is a road that is difficult to journey upon. A road that will cause many people to cry, to suffer pains and heartache. It is this road that Yahweh wants us to travel upon that will ultimately lead to life and blessings. Hear what the psalmist said in Psalms 23. He says, Yahweh is my shepherd. He guides me in right paths. He says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he says, I will fear no evil because you are with me. Did you hear what he's saying? God is leading him as a shepherd. He says, but yet you lead me in the valley of the shadow of death. David is saying that Yahweh, who is his shepherd, has purposely led him along a path that is treacherous, a way that seems to threaten his very life. And in spite of the dangers that lay upon this path, David yet calls it the path of righteousness, or the right path, or the right way. Regardless of what is on this path, he says it is the right way because God is leading me there. He says, I may have to endure what is upon this road because he knows this, that at the end of that journey, that road, then God will make him lie down in green pastures. He knows at the end of that road that he'll be able to drink from still waters. David is so sure that blessings await him at the end of his journey, he says this: he restores my soul. In other words, David is saying, every single thing that I lost on this journey, it will be restored. David understood that whatever he lost as he traveled and journeyed on this path, that in the end, those things will be restored to him. In much the same way, when Job endured suffering and pain, this man endured. This was the path God chose for him. In the end, the scripture says everything was restored back to him, but not only restored, it was what? Double, baby. Job was rewarded double for his troubles. Now, even Job could say, he restores my soul. In other words, remember when Peter came to Yeshua, it says, we gave up everything to follow you. And what did Yeshua say? He says, those who have lost houses and cars and parents and children and friends for my sake or the gospel's sake, he says, in this world you shall get back what? Homes and cars and children and parents and friends. He says, baby, this road, though you may lose some things, he says, if you persevere, you shall get them back. And then he says, and in the world to come, everlasting life. But he says this one last caveat, he says, with persecutions. In other words, this road we are traveling is hard. You will face persecutions. You will face suffering. But everything you have lost, you will get back. If we are willing to obey Yahweh and journey with him down this hard road, great blessings await the people of God. I know that's hard. That's hard to comprehend. But it speaks to this. Will you obey him or not, even if you're hurting? If we are willing to order our lives by Yahweh's word that are written in the 66 books of Scripture, regardless of what we might have to endure, then the door will be open unto us, and no one can then shut it. Once the windows of blessings are open, baby, nobody can shut it. A door that will lead to great rewards in this life and in the life to come. Now listen, in this last closing statement, listen to what Moses said to the children of Israel. And I believe God is saying to us as well. In Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 26 to 28, he says this. He says, see, I am setting before you today a blessing and a curse. He says Israel has to make a choice, a decision. Will you be blessed or will you be cursed? He says the blessing if you listen or to obey the commandments of Yahweh your God that I am giving you today. And the curse if you don't listen or if you disobey the commandments of Yahweh your God, but turn aside from the way I am ordering you today. Set before us is a decision that we must make today and every day of our lives. That is a decision of blessings or curses. Blessings if we choose to journey along the path that Yahweh has laid out for us. A path that not only requires our complete obedience to his word, but a path that has obstacles and barriers. If we choose to journey this way, hear me now, and I guarantee it, we will suffer. We will face hard times. We will face difficult times. but at its end we shall also reap a great reward. And curses await those who choose not to journey along Yahweh's path, because they deem it quite unfair that God would have us travel upon such a hard road. These are people who want the easy life. We want to go back to Egypt where there was, they say, onions and leeks. The easy life, because this desert is much too hard. A life of ease and comfort. Blessings without the necessary struggle. Stepping off of the road of righteousness signals to Yahweh our disobedience towards his will and his word. Such actions will result in our receiving the curses that Yahweh has stored up for those who openly rebel against him. And I leave with you this last sentence. As Moses said to the people of Israel, our ancestors, so I say to you. God has set before you today a blessing and a curse. Now you choose.